So what the objectors are actually saying here is that, look, causality can only make sense with time. And they usually refer to the Big Bang. They say, since time began at the Big Bang, then we cannot claim something called the universe because there was no before at the beginning of the Big Bang. In absence of time, there is no cause or effect because cause comes before effect. Now, brothers and sisters and friends, there are a few problems with this objection, and listen to them very carefully, because you'll be able to be empowered to deal with this type of objection, which is actually unfortunately being popularized. The first thing to say is, well, the view that causality only makes sense with time actually requires some proof. Because if you study philosophy, Western philosophy in particular, there's a massive discussion on the nature of the causal link. There's a massive discussion on causality. And I don't even think there is a consensus on what the nature of the causal link or causal relations are, right? So there are various approaches that attempt to understand and define causality and causal relations. One such approach is something called simultaneous causality. What is simultaneous causality? Well, this is the view that the causes always occur simultaneously with the immediate effects. Okay, so one could argue that the universe and its cause occurred at the same time. So take the following thought experiment as an example of simultaneous causality. Imagine an eternal ball on an eternal pillow. The ball causes the indentation of the pillow, but the cause, which is the ball, does not come before the effect, which is the indentation of the pillow. And here, time is not a factor due to the eternality of both objects. So in the context of this argument, we could say that it could be that the moment God brought the universe into existence was the moment the universe came into being. This type of causation is called atemporal causation, right? This means that the cause, in this case, God's will and power, occurred prior causally, but not prior temporally, not prior in time. The cause and effect occurred simultaneously. Just like with the thought experiment of the eternal ball and the eternal pillow, you can't say one comes before the other because they're both eternal, but you would never say that the indentation of the pillow is not as a result of the ball. Of course, the ball is the cause for the indentation of the pillow, but the ball doesn't exist prior in time because in this thought experiment, they're both eternal. So in this case, you can have something existing prior causally. In basic language, the ball actually causes the indentation, but it doesn't exist prior temporally, prior in time, because both objects are eternal. And it could be the same case from a conceptual point of view, that it's the same case with the universe, that the moment God or Allah brought the universe into existence was the moment the universe came into being. This means that God's will and power occurred prior causally, but not prior in time. The cause and effect occurred simultaneously. That's one way of dealing with it. Another way of dealing with it is, well, it assumes that there is a consensus on the notion of time in science. There is no consensus. There are different notions of time in quantum mechanics and general relativity. To assume that there is only one conception of time misrepresents literature, because this objection is assuming only one notion of time. The third point, which I think is a very powerful response to this objection, is this objection is actually self-defeating. Okay, it shoots itself in the foot. Okay, if they're saying causality cannot exist without time, then they have to reject the Big Bang. Why? Because given that at the point of the Big Bang singularity, there was no time, but a boundary to time, and the boundary to time is obviously causally connected to the rest of the universe, then how can this causal relation make sense with no time? Now, if the people who object, right, accept that the boundary is causally connected to the rest of the universe, by the way, they would have to, they have no choice, they should also accept the same causal relation when God decided to manifest his will and power to create the universe. Because think about it. If the boundary of the universe, time is zero, there is no time, but the rest of the universe is causally connected to the boundary of the universe when there is no time, then they have to accept that causality makes sense when there is no time. So if they maintain that causality doesn't make sense out of time, they would have to reject the causal relation between the boundary of the singularity to the rest of the universe, which is tantamount, which is equivalent to rejecting the existence of the universe itself. Now, obviously, the objector may argue that some physicists maintain that the universe has no boundary, but this, however, is a contentious issue and has no consensus. So given that there isn't a consensus on the nature of causality and the concept of time is contested, and the objection that we just mentioned, and the objection that they mention is not an undercutting defeater to this argument, then I don't think we should even take this seriously.